Shalom, everyone. I'm Uncle Moshe. Next comes Taped with Rabbi Doug.
We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug on your TV tonight.
But Daddy, I want to watch Monday Night Football.
Forget about Monday Night Football. There's no other thing we're going to watch on Monday but Rabbi Doug.
Yeah, Rabbi Doug on TV tonight. We're going to see Rabbi Doug. Oh, everybody talk about Doug.
Shalom, welcome to Taped with Rabbi Doug. Glad you could be with us today. Today on the show, I have my good friend and guest, Barry Exler.
Hi, Doug.
Hi, Barry. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Barry's an amazing guy because you can't even go down the list of things that he does. He is the president of a consulting firm which specializes in fundraising and community events. He runs events for nonprofit organizations and is a community activist for so much. I mean, just to even go down the list of things that you've done over the years would fill up half of a show. But you've been involved in the History Channel's Holocaust-related documentary. Right. You've done things for the Prevent Blindness America, for the Board of Jewish Education, for the Jewish Federation. You're involved with the aldermen in Chicago. You just everything. You've been the head of Israel Bonds. Right. You've just done so much in your time in the Jewish community and in the community as a whole to help make things better for the community. And one of the things you're involved with now, which I know is very close to your heart, is the Israel Film Festival, the 19th Israel Film Festival here. And can you tell me a little bit, what is the film festival, what is it about, and why is it coming to Chicago?
It is the 19th Annual Israel Film Festival, as you said, but it's the 4th year only that it's here in Chicago, and we have the pleasure to lead the film festival off this year. Israel Film Festival, I would say, is the premier Israel cultural event in the United States. They take the top movies, those are the feature films, those are the documentaries, those are the made-for-TV movies, so there's over 20 films. There's about 20 to 25 films that we're going to be showcasing here in Chicago, May 8th to 15th. It'll be at the Esquire Theater during the week, and on Sunday there'll be 2 showings, one at the Esquire Theater, the other at the Highland Park Theater. And all of these documentaries, all of these feature films, all of these made-for-TV movies will be shown. Opening night, we're going to be presenting 2 awards. One is to Harold Ramis, the noted director of Ghostbusters, Analyze This and Analyze That, and also Bill Zwecker from the Sun-Times and also for Channel 2. So, we're very proud to have those 2 on the festival. This year we have an outstanding group of movies. We really do. The festival will be led off by a movie called Trumpet in the Wadi. It won the Haifa Film Festival Award. It's about a Russian immigrant male who meets an Arab woman, and they fall in love despite the many problems, and we'll find out how it works. There's a series that was done on the Israeli television last year that was called The Woman's Reflections. It was all women directors, and there are some outstanding love stories in there. There are really 2 in particular that I enjoyed. One was The Postwoman, and the other one is All I've Got. 2 incredible love stories. All I've Got is really one of the most unique love stories that I've ever seen. There's some very fine documentaries. There's one about a group of teenagers, both religious and also non-religious, who join together, and they learn about each other, and they learn how to interact with each other. There's one called Dugit Over Troubled Water, which is about the city Dugit that's in the Gaza Strip and all the problems they've gone through. So it's, with all the news that comes out of Israel today and all the bad news that comes out of Israel today, this is a chance to see a wonderful side of Israel. There's some very talented people in the film industry. So it's a chance to see their work, and it's a chance to support their efforts.
Tell me, who's bringing this to Chicago? How does it, come here? Obviously, they're not making any money. Right. It's not a profit thing. What is the purpose and who pays? I mean, it's got to be an expensive venture to tour the United States with all these films.
Our city alone, the cost will be between $75,000 to $100,000. The 2 main sponsors are the Israeli Consulate and also the Jewish Federation. And then there's a number of individuals and or companies that have stepped forward and helped to fund it. Also, organizations also sponsor screenings. So an organization can sponsor a screening at a particular time, and they get a bunch of tickets, and they sell it to their members. So it's a good fundraiser for them as well. The festival was founded 19 years ago by a man that may be familiar to some of your audience. His name is Mayor Fenigstein, and he was the lead drummer in a group called Poogie. And actually, he was Poogie. That was his nickname. And he founded the film festival, and he negotiated with the Israeli artists, filmmakers, and he brought it over. And it started small, and today it's in 4 cities. It's in Chicago, the lead city. It's in Los Angeles, it's in New York, and it's in Miami. So we estimate that over 50,000 people will go to the Israeli Film Festival and see the movies. One film that is not in the film festival this year, but I just want to tell you about the quality of films, is a film called Broken Wings. It was almost nominated for the Academy Award. Broken Wings is the first Israeli movie that was picked up by a major movie company. Sony Classics picked it up. So they're going to be showing it in the fall, which means that we couldn't get it, for the festival. But it only tells you about the quality of the film festival. That film won the Tokyo Film Festival. It won the Berlin Film Festival. Wow. So we're talking about some great movies. And anybody that comes to the festival is really going to have a wonderful time. That's great. And I remember I saw Poogie on Israel Independence Day and Yom Ha'atzmaut when they played here for the Israel Consulate back when I was a young boy. Yeah. So it's amazing to bring them up. Kaberet was their big song. Oh, gosh. Oh, gosh. So, yeah. And so Mayor is the lead, he's the founder and he was the drummer. Great. So it'll be in Chicago May 8th to May 15th for our viewers who might be watching in Los Angeles, May 28th to June 8th. In Manhattan, those who are watching us, and in New York, it's June 19th to July 3rd. And then down it'll be in Miami, November 13th to 20th. How did we get the honors of opening in Chicago? It worked out it just worked out on the calendar, and also because of the situation right now in the Middle East. There were some directors that couldn't come over earlier, so we just let it off. That's very exciting. We're going to have a number of the directors and also the stars of the movies coming over. For example, The Trumpet and the Wadi, which is the lead-off film, we'll have both directors there for the festival and stay the whole week, and there'll be a number of times. They'll be going to schools, they'll be going to college campuses to also talk. So there's an outreach to this as well. That's great. Yeah, it's been a wonderful thing to be involved with. It really has. Wow. Yeah. Wow. It's wonderful. Barry, you do so much. I want to jump to something right now about Barry Exler, which I think is just an amazing thing because the stories are unbelievable that go with it, and that is you are clergy on a number of cruise lines. Yes. You actually go and lead services on Jewish holidays, right, and lead Seders on Passover. Right. And it's just an amazing thing. First of all, tell me something. How do you become involved in cruise lines to do something like that when you're a full-time, worker in the Jewish community? Well, I'm the official cruise rabbi. And what happened was I was reading an article that was in the Hadassah magazine maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and it said the Jews were traveling more on the holidays. So I cut the article out. I sent it to over 50 cruise lines, and I said, listen, why don't you bring somebody like me on board to do services and other kinds of programming for the major Jewish holidays 3 or 4 times a year, and you'll have passengers who will enjoy it. Word of mouth will spread. You'll get repeat passengers coming back, and we'll try it. So there was 1 or 2 cruise lines that took me up on it, and it was very nice. And then Bob Herguth, who was a columnist for the Chicago Sun-Times. I remember him well. Remember? So he had a personality column, if you remember, and he was trying to do something on the holidays. Somebody told him about the cruise rabbi, so he did a whole page article on me, which was great. I had the article Xerox, sent it back to the cruise lines and said, see what you're missing, the cruise rabbi. And then the cruise line started to call. So now I'm affiliated with about 5 or 6 cruise lines. And I have to tell you, Doug, honestly speaking, even though there's a glee in my eye and my voice, honestly speaking, it's been one of the most wonderful things in my life. Well, you meet people from all over the world. All over the world. I've been able to travel anywhere. This past high holidays, I was in the Baltics. I was in St. Petersburg, at Helsinki, Stockholm, Copenhagen. I've been to Singapore. I've been to Turkey and the Greek islands. It's just been great. Wow. Yeah, this Passover, I'm going to China. I'm going to lead a Seder in Shanghai, so that's wonderful. I have 3 sets of dishes now. There's milk, there's meat, and there's red china. My wife's cousin is living in Shanghai on business. He travels up and back, actually, so maybe I'll send them over there. Maybe send them over there, yeah. So it's going to be very nice, and it's just been a wonderful experience. As you said, I meet incredible people. People on a cruise line are warm, and they're relaxed, and they're open, and they talk to you. They come to the services for both the religious reasons, but even more for the social reasons. They want to see and meet all the other Jews on board. It's been very nice for me in that there's been a large number of non-Jewish people who come to services. You know, they want to learn about the high holidays or the Seder. I had one experience. It was out to Hawaii, and a woman came to the Seder, not Jewish, and we got to the point about in each generation there's somebody, you know, who rises up against you. And I told a very interesting story about Mr. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and the chief rabbi of Israel, which is an incredible story of its own. And after the Seder, she comes up to me and she has tears in her eyes and she said, I have to talk to you. I have to talk to you. So we went over to the side. As a young girl, she was raised in Berlin, in a Jewish neighborhood. She used to go to the Jewish stores. There was one candy man that used to give her candy all the time. And her mother took her out to see, you know, Kristallnacht. She remembers Kristallnacht and the destruction and how terrible it was. And she kind of kept this in her. And when she came to the Seder, it just exploded out of her. So that was one kind of rare and unique, unique situation.
Wow.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most entertaining thing of all the cruises you've been on? You've been everywhere. What do you think? I know that you entertain also.
Right.
But what do you think has been the most entertaining experience you've come through?
We've been a few.
Thousands of people.
Yeah. Well, I had to her first Hanukkah program, and you know, she came. She didn't know what to expect, so I had all the kids. She was in the middle of the circle, and all the kids were dancing around her. Then we lit the Hanukkah candles, which, you know, on a ship, you're really not supposed to light the candles, but they let us light it. And she's looking around, and they're singing dreidel, and she's like looking at me, get me out of here. You know, she didn't know what to expect. But she had a good time. One time during Pesach, you know, they have me down on the computer what I need. So normally on a cruise line, they know that on a Shabbat, on a Friday night service, I like a challah afterwards. I like 2 challahs afterwards, and we make the motzi. So this was I had a Seder, but then came a Friday night service, but they have me down in the computer as a challahs. So in the middle of the service, these 2 huge challahs come in that smell. They were just, oh my God. The other funny story, on the Disney cruise line, I was meeting with the chef beforehand, and we went over the Seder plate and told them what we needed, and there were about 80 people coming to the Seder, so I make 1 Seder plate for each of the 8 or 10 tables. I get to the Seder that night, and the poor guy must have been working like for days and days and days. He said every single person, with the egg and with the roasted shank bone and with the whole thing.
Oh my goodness!
So I had a person die on me, unfortunately, on a cruise line, so that was a little bit difficult. And we were in such places that we couldn't fly the body back, but they have facilities on board the cruise line, interestingly enough. And it's been interesting, you know, meeting my other colleagues, and we've done some joint programming together and things together. So, yeah, just the whole experience has been great.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
And I've had an opportunity really to travel the world and to see Jewish communities. I always manage to take a side trip with anybody, you know, who wants to join me to the synagogue or to other Jewish sites in the particular city that we're in. So that's been very good.
Now, I went on once a strictly kosher Passover cruise, and I thought that one of the most interesting places I went to I didn't know had a big Jewish population was St. Thomas.
Yes.
And I went to the synagogue there. Unfortunately, they don't have regular services there.
It's on Synagogue Hill, actually.
Yeah, on Synagogue Hill. I thought it was the most interesting, but I understand from since then, because I was much younger, you know, I'm reading through, I was in Barbados, that Barbados had a Jewish community. I didn't go and visit it because I didn't know. Where do you think the most interesting ancient Jewish community in the islands and the places that you visited is?
Well, Curacao probably has the oldest synagogue, and that's like the St. Thomas synagogue. It has the sand on the floor. Barbados is very interesting because actually they have 2 congregations. There's the regular congregation, but then there's like a black Hebrew congregation, which is very interesting. So that was interesting to find out that there were Jews on these islands, and of course going to some of the European cities and seeing the ancient synagogues that were in Copenhagen or in Stockholm, and it's just very, very interesting to see it.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's just been a great experience and just a wonderful opportunity for me.
Great.
Yeah.
Tell me, you know, in the fundraising scene, who do you think are the neediest Jewish organizations? And I know a lot of them are needy right now. What where do you think the neediest Jewish organizations that you've either helped or you know, been involved in donating to? You have so many connections. You're aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
When people are saying what's a needy organization that I can donate time to, or you know, put my time in, or help out in some way, what are those organizations today?
You know, today. The ones that are more pro-Israel based probably have an easier time because of the situation in Israel. So I had the great pleasure to raise money for Shaarei Tzedek Hospital for 7-8 years. And of course, today with all the terrorist bombings, with all the situations where they have to prevent a possible chemical attacks, I mean, institutions like that probably come to the forefront and have an easier time, let's say, than somebody like a Chai Lifeline, which is a wonderful organization.
And we featured them on our show, actually.
They're a great organization and help kids, you know, with their wishes, special needs and things. In other words, if it's an organization that doesn't have an immediate need, you know, that one can see, it probably today has a little bit harder time, you know, to raise money. But you know, through the hospital, I had the opportunity to take some wonderful people to Israel. I took Michael Jordan's mother twice to Israel, Dolores, who is a fantastic woman with some great experiences. First time we landed, it was Purim in Tel Aviv. So we walked off the plane, and she sees all these costumes and all these kids. She didn't know what was going on. So I explained to her the story, and she's a good listener. She's very interested. Then we went into Jerusalem. And, of course, the next day in Jerusalem, because it's a walled city, that was Purim the next day. So, again, she saw the same thing with everything going on. And she comes to me in the late morning. She says, Barry, she says, I'd like to go here to scroll tonight. I said, wow. So I called the Hebrew Union College, which was next door, you know, to the King David, where we were staying. And I felt it would be the best service for her.
Because
and
she could be right up there.
Right up there. So I called them up, and they were very excited to have her. And we went that night, and they really welcomed her, and she got into it with the Groggers and the Hamans and the whole business. But, I mean, she's a very spiritual lady. So she loved the Sea of Galilee. She was baptized in the Jordan River. We had some special experiences together that really forged. It was Dolores, it was her daughter Roz, whom I taught the Hatikvah to. So at Mrs. Jordan's dinner, Roz got up and sang the Hatikvah, as good as any person that I've ever heard sing the Hatikvah. She was just fantastic.
That is amazing.
And then when we made the second trip, it was with a little bit larger group, and we met with Mrs. Rabin at the time, and Roz got up there and sang the Hatikvah again, and it was a great trip. Joni Sledge was on my trip, and if she ever comes back to Chicago, I will have her on the program. It was Sister Sledge. We are family. I mean, it was just a very special trip.
Wow.
It was half Jewish, it was half non-Jewish, and everybody got along, and we toured each other's sites, and it was just a great experience.
Now, in your running dinners and running events, you have met so many famous people and so many celebrities and politicians. In the political scene,
right.
Who have you come across in the political scene that everyone knows? Have you ever met a president?
I have actually. It's funny you should say that, because I'm going to be writing a book called Famous People Who Know Me. So that's going to be the name of my book. And I was friendly. Interestingly enough, it's a great moment in my life. I was friendly with Clara Stern, was her name. She was Golda's sister. And Clara Stern was a very close family friend. And she in her own right was a wonderful person. She was, back then when it wasn't popular, like in the 40s, 30s, 40s, she was a Jewish Federation director. She was the head of the Bridgeport, Jewish Federation. She was friendly. Anyway, so I got to meet Clara, and when Golda came to see Nixon, there was a state dinner, and I went as Clara's escort to that, to that state dinner. So I got to meet Nixon and with Clara, and of course Golda many times in her apartment, and so that was a special experience for me. I've met a lot of senators. I've met prime ministers. So it's nice.
It's so cool. So do your children have pictures of Abba with all the famous people?
They do. As a matter of fact, if you remember, I brought Ariel Sharon into Chicago in 1993 or 1994, and he spent the whole day traveling. He was there on behalf of the city of David at the time, and if you remember, they were trying to buy the property in the city of David. So he was with a nice guy, but who was an Israeli commando. He was probably a tough guy, but short guy, but tough guy, who was kosher. So we spent the whole day running, and by the time it was time to eat in the evening, there were no restaurants open. So I called home and I said, I'm bringing Ario Sharon, put together something. So he came into our kitchen table and sat down, and we served him because that's all there was in the house. We served him hot dogs and hamburgers, and that's what he ate. So Ario Sharon ate hot dogs in my home.
That's a great story.
I took Jack Brickhouse to Israel, and Jack was in our house, and on many occasions Dolores came to a Seder once. So hey, Jack was a real hit.
He was a great guy. I actually met him. I actually on the show. We covered Sid Luckman's funeral, and I met Jack Brickhouse for the first time there in person. Yeah. Actually, it was the second time. I met him once when he was at a dinner for Federation, but a very, very nice guy.
I gave him a sports humanitarian where he had a great line. He was about the Cubs. He said, every team can have a bad century. But here's an interesting story. Jack's wife is Jewish. Pat is Jewish, and she called me up just before the trip and said her son was going to be in Israel, and could he join the group one night? I said, absolutely. So, we go to Pfefferberg's restaurant that was on Jaffa Road. Remember old Pfefferberg's restaurant? And we're in the back eating, and all of a sudden, Jack Brickhouse's stepson comes in. I have to mention, and he had been trying different things, and he got involved in this yeshiva. So he came in with tzitzis hanging out and payas and all kinds. So here I was just amazed. You know what? You can never tell, and that's what makes this a wonderful world.
It is really. Yeah. That's just amazing. Yeah. So, in all your travels and all the people you meet, what do you think has been the most meaningful experience in your life? Because I don't meet many people who do what you do. You've just been everywhere, done everything. You're connected to everyone. Everyone knows your name.
There were two meaningful experiences I had. I mean, many were meaningful experiences, but really two stand out. One was I was sent by the Mossad in 1974 to the Soviet Union to spend Passover.
Which, by the way, is the Israel Secret Service.
Correct. And to give you some background, at the time, in 1974, that was not a good time, for Russian Jews. Okay, the country's being run by Brezhnev, and for a Jew, one of the only ways for a Jew to get out of the Soviet Union was if a relative from Israel invited that Jew to come to Israel. Well, of course, there was no large immigration at that time. There were no relatives. My job was to go to Seder, was to go to Shul, was to spend time with Russian Jews, smuggle their names and addresses out of the country, which was an experience all of its own, to the Israeli government, who would then create relatives and write back to these people, which is what I did. And that was just an incredible experience. It made me, you say at the Seder that each year you should feel as if you came out of Egypt. For years before that, I used to say it had no meaning. Every single year since that point, it always has meaning for me. Wow. That was, and I've met with Jews that I helped to get out, and I've met them later in Israel. We had some incredible experiences, but that was a meaningful one. The other meaningful thing I did that was really important in my life, and people still stop me on the street today, was in 1991, when there was no tourism going to Israel. It was the first Gulf War, and I went to a meeting of the tourism and El Al and hotels, and they were complaining about the fact that nobody was going. And I walked up to them afterwards and I said, stop complaining, let's put something together. And I went to Larry Hochberg at the time, and I said, Larry, I don't think I have the credibility in order to do this by myself. Will you join me? And he said, absolutely. And he got the Federation involved. So, and so we put together a one-week trip to Israel during the war. Just, it was in January when the Scuds were coming, of 1 week in Israel with airfare, hotel, touring, food, everything included was $500. Wow. And I thought maybe 50 of my nutty friends would come. We had over 275 people. They were young, they were old, they were both religious, they were non-religious, there were fathers who had been estranged from their kids and brought them on the trip, and they brought them together. And I'll tell you something, people, as I said, still stop me on the street today and say, that trip changed my life. So that was, we had 275 Chicagoans.
Did any Scuds fall while you were there?
We left on January 14th. That's when the trip was, from the 7th to the 14th. About half the group stayed, and on the 15th, that's when the Scuds started to fall. So members of the group did experience the Scud missiles in Israel, and it was terrible. The Hyatt Hotel, which is a beautiful hotel, as you know, was empty. They were offering us free rooms if we stayed, just to have people in the hotel and stuff. So those were tough times, and I was in Israel this past January, and again, other than Birthright, which had thousands of kids there, it was wonderful to see. Other than Birthright, it was Birthright and me at the hotel. That was it. So that was sad. The streets were empty, and of course, tourism, as the war progresses, probably even goes down more. So these are difficult times, but.
As a philanthropist and someone so involved in everything with the Iraq situation, with the Palestinian terrorism situation, when do you think things will get better for Israel? It's just so tough right now.
It is tough, which only means that we have to do things. If we're not going to go there, we just have to increase our efforts here with things like the Israel Film Festival and other opportunities to show both our families and the Jewish community, but also the national community, that we care, and we just have to do the best we can, in however we can. But I'm a believer. I think things are going to get better, and we've had some dark moments, but there's a wonderful midrash, if I have time to tell it. There's a wonderful midrash about after Adam was created. He was walking through the Garden of Eden, and he was naming things, and he was eating things, and he was having a jolly good time. And then darkness came, and he never experienced darkness. And he was afraid. He didn't know whether the sun would rise again. So he cries out to God, help me do a miracle, please, of a light and a heat, whatever. So God tells Adam, get down on your hands and knees, grab 2 rocks, put them together, rub them together, and you'll create fire and light. Well, to me, that midrash says that we all have moments of darkness in our lives, okay, but God gives us the ability to pray and to hope and gives us the tools from which we can create miracles. We as a people have had many moments of darkness in our history, but with our prayers and our concern and our support, we're going to continue the miracle that has been Israel for the past 55 years, and we're going to give hope to Israelis and to Jews all over the world.
Wow. Barry, I got to tell you, that's a wonderful thing to close on, and I just want to thank you for being with us today. We didn't cover half the things I wanted to talk about, and I knew that was going to happen, so maybe we'll have you back another time in the future, because there's so much more to share, and I got to hear some more of your stories that are entertaining.
First kosher meal at Holy Name Cathedral.
That's a story we never got to, but we definitely should talk about that next time.
May 8th to 15th, Israel Film Festival. These are films of all kinds. Some you're going to agree with, some you're not going to agree with, but that's the beauty of art, and there are just some fine films.
I hope our people get out there to see it. Thank you for being with us. I want to thank my guest, Barry Exler, and remember, we're on every week at this time. See you next time here on Taped with Rabbi Doug. Shalom.